Welcome to tonight's story session. As the rain falls softly outside your window, let the sound guide you into a state of calm. In this quiet darkness, I will share with you true scary stories, whispers from real people, moments they never forgot, experiences that left them shivering in the night. These are not tales of imagination, but accounts of strange encounters, footsteps in empty hallways, shadows that move when no one is there, and voices carried through the rain. As you listen, allow yourself to relax, to drift slowly toward sleep. The rhythm of the rainfall will protect you, while the stories carry your thoughts far away. Close your eyes, take a breath, and surrender to the night. This is Volume 85. You are safe, you are calm, and the rain will watch over you. Now, let us begin. The rain falls steady against the window, a gentle rhythm that seems endless, a curtain of sound that wraps the night in its cool embrace, and as you sit here listening, I invite you to drift with me into a collection of true stories whispered by strangers, accounts that echo with the eerie quiet of reality, tales that were never meant to be tales at all but memories carved into the minds of those who lived them, memories that returned to haunt them whenever the sky darkened and the rain began to fall. Imagine a small apartment, dimly lit, the rain tapping at the glass, and a young woman lying in bed listening to that sound, when she hears another rhythm, softer at first, a creak across the wooden floorboards, as though someone else were moving in the room. She knows she is alone, she had locked the door, she had checked it twice, but the sound is unmistakable, measured steps crossing her room, and she cannot bring herself to look. Her breath grows shallow, her eyes fixed on the ceiling as the invisible presence draws closer until the air feels heavy, pressing down, and just when she thinks she cannot bear it, the footsteps stop, leaving only the rain to cover the silence, and in the morning nothing is out of place, no sign of intrusion, yet the dread stays with her, a memory tied forever to rainy nights. Another man recalls his childhood home where his room faced the backyard, a place with tall trees that swayed and whispered whenever storms rolled in, and one night during a long rain he woke to see a shape outside his window, not an animal, not the sway of branches, but the outline of a person standing very still, watching. He called for his father who came rushing, yet when the curtains were pulled back the figure was gone, though the ground beneath was soaked and soft, and in the mud beneath the window were footprints, human and bare, leading toward the woods and vanishing among the dripping trees. Some stories are brief yet chilling, like the account of a nurse working overnight shifts in a quiet hospital wing, where the sound of rain against the roof often lulled her into a calm routine, until she began to notice that each time a storm passed, a bell at the end of the hall would ring, though no patients were in that room, and each time she went to check, the bed was perfectly made, empty, untouched, yet she swore she felt eyes on her as she left, as though someone unseen had been waiting. Then there are those stories that stretch long into the night, layered with detail, impossible to dismiss, like the traveler who rented a cabin deep in the countryside, where the sound of rain on the tin roof became his constant companion, soothing at first until he realized it was masking another sound, a steady knocking at the door that came only after midnight. Each night the knock returned, soft, polite, almost patient, but when he opened the door nothing was there, only the rain and the dark. By the third night he tried to ignore it, but the knocking grew louder, urgent, until finally he stood behind the door and demanded to know who was there. The answer came not from outside but from behind him, a whisper in the room, clear enough to freeze him in place, and though he fled that cabin before dawn, he swore the whisper followed him into his dreams for months to come. As the rain continues to fall outside, let these stories wash over you, not to disturb your rest but to remind you of the mystery that lingers in the quiet moments of night. Every creak of the floorboards, every shadow that shifts, every whisper carried by the storm holds within it the possibility of truth, the kind of truth we rarely admit to ourselves in daylight. Many who shared their experiences never sought attention, never wanted their stories told, but the weight of the memory was too much to carry alone, and in speaking it aloud, they passed a piece of that burden into the world, where it waits now for us to hear, to imagine, to feel. And as you listen, safe and warm, the rain will guard you, the steady sound will calm your heartbeat, and the edge of fear will soften into curiosity, until your eyes grow heavy and sleep takes you gently. But before you drift away, let one more story linger in your mind, a story of a man driving home on a lonely road in the middle of a storm, the wipers pushing back sheets of rain, the headlights catching only the empty asphalt ahead, until a figure appeared standing in the lane, forcing him to swerve. He pulled to the side, shaken, but when he looked back the figure was gone, no sign of anyone, no footprints in the soaked pavement, and yet when he settled back behind the wheel, the passenger seat beside him was wet, as though someone had been sitting there, dripping from the rain. The rain never truly ends in these memories, it falls like a constant backdrop, a rhythm that comforts some and unsettles others, and perhaps that is why so many of these stories are tied to storms, because the rain has a way of amplifying silence, of making every sound sharper, every shadow deeper, and when the world outside is hidden behind sheets of water, the imagination has no boundaries. One woman tells of a night in her college dorm when a thunderstorm swept across the campus, the windows rattling, the hallways quiet, and she lay in bed listening to the downpour when a knock came at her door. She ignored it, assuming it was a prank, but the knock returned, steady, patient, always 3 taps, and when she finally rose to check, the hallway was empty, stretching silent under flickering lights. She closed the door, unsettled, but as she turned back to her room she froze, for there was water dripping onto the carpet in the middle of the floor, a small puddle forming though the ceiling showed no leak, and in the reflection of that puddle she thought she saw someone standing behind her. Another account comes from a father who had taken his young son on a fishing trip, staying overnight in an old lodge near the lake, the kind of place where the wood is aged and the roof hums with the sound of rain. He said his son woke him in the middle of the night, frightened, claiming there was a boy standing outside their window, watching them. The father checked, but saw nothing but the rain streaking down the glass. He comforted his son and told him it was just a dream, yet in the morning they found small muddy footprints leading up to the window, and none leading away. The lodge owner, when asked, simply nodded and said other guests had seen the same boy during storms, a boy who drowned in the lake decades ago. Some stories come not from isolated cabins or remote roads but from ordinary homes, like the man who grew up in a suburban house where rainstorms often made the power flicker. He recalls lying awake during one such storm when he heard the faint sound of whispering, voices layered together, too low to make out words, but undeniably real. He thought it was his parents in the living room until he gathered the courage to leave his bed, and found the house dark, his parents asleep, no television, no radio, only the rain. The whispers did not stop though, they followed him back to his room, circling, as if the rain carried them straight through the walls. He never told his family, but every rainy night afterward he slept with his head under the covers, too afraid to listen. There are stories from travelers, too, who find that storms on the road carry more than water. One woman driving late at night described pulling over beneath an overpass, the rain so heavy she could not see ahead, and in that moment of waiting she noticed a figure at the edge of the concrete wall, crouched low as though hiding. She locked her doors quickly, but when the rain lightened and she prepared to drive again, she glanced back and saw the backseat seatbelt pulled tight, stretched across as though securing something invisible. She drove the rest of the way home in silence, never daring to look behind her again. Some accounts are almost gentle in their telling, yet still they cling to the listener like damp clothing. A teacher remembers grading papers by candlelight when a storm knocked out the power, the rain a steady hum outside. She grew so tired she fell asleep at her desk, and woke to the feeling of a hand brushing her shoulder. Startled, she looked around, but the house was empty, the candle long melted down, and the only sound was the endless rain. But in the papers on her desk, one essay she had never seen before rested on top, written in a handwriting she did not recognize, and the first line read, "I am still here, watching." She burned the paper without showing anyone, yet never again worked late during a storm. The stories continue like waves, each one different yet connected by the same rhythm of falling water. A security guard recalls patrolling an office building at night when the rain beat against the tall glass windows, creating a curtain of sound that almost lulled him into forgetting his duty. But as he walked the quiet halls, he noticed wet footprints leading across the polished floor, fresh enough to glisten in the dim light. He followed them carefully, but they stopped suddenly in the middle of the hallway, no body, no exit, just an end. Later, when he reviewed the security cameras, the footage showed the footprints appearing one by one, with no visible source. He quit his job a week later. As you listen to these stories, the rain continues, steady and calm, carrying you deeper into the quiet. The line between fear and relaxation is thin, and sometimes fear itself becomes a rhythm, a pulse that slows your thoughts and guides you closer to sleep. You are not in those places, you are not hearing those whispers, you are safe, surrounded only by sound. Yet the memories of others drift into your imagination, and for a moment you glimpse the edges of their night, their shadows, their rain-soaked silence. Another man describes renting a room in an old farmhouse, where storms seemed to last longer than anywhere else. Each time the rain came, he heard knocking from the attic above, though the landlord assured him no one used it. Finally, one stormy night, curiosity overcame his fear, and he pulled down the ladder. The attic was empty except for one rocking chair that swayed slowly, creaking in time with the rain. He stared, frozen, until a voice whispered his name, and the chair stopped rocking all at once. He never returned to that farmhouse again.